the elephant in the room. There is an elephant in the room. It is large and squatting, so it's hard to get around it. Yet we squeeze by with, "How are you?" and "I'm fine," and 1,000 other forms of trivial chatter. We talk about the weather, we talk about work, we talk about everything else except the elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room. We all know it's there. We're thinking about the elephant as we talk together. It's constantly on our minds. For if you see, it is a very large elephant, and it has hurt us all. But we do not talk about the elephant in the room. Oh, please say his or her name. Oh, please say their name again. Please, let's talk about the elephant in the room. For we talk about his or her death, perhaps we could talk about his or her life. Can I say their name to you without you not wanting to look away? For if I cannot, you're leaving me alone in a room with an elephant. This is by Terry Kittering. Hi, my name is Gina Sabatini. I'm a grief coach and educator. And with me today is
Alex. And hello again. So the last podcast we talked about heart, and today we're going to talk about one of the organs that is, I would say, the second most important organ in the body, which is the lungs. And if you can think about the lungs, it holds the heart, because you have the heart and the two lungs around the heart, right? So lungs is, we're going to see in this podcast, lungs is an important organ and also responsible for most of our grieving when we enters the grieving process. And we're gonna talk a little bit about grieving, because grieving doesn't mean that you have someone in your life that, you know, pass and you experience grieving. You can grieve for different situations too. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. So with me, Gina again, I'm Dr. Alex, and we're gonna start this podcast right now. So Gina,
Yes.
Let's talk about lungs.
I like to talk about lungs. This is the season too, of
Yes.
the lung and of grief.
And it's interesting because when you say this is the season, we are recording this podcast just when the falls, started.
Mm-hmm.
And falls is the season of metal, and metal it's one of the 5 phases in Chinese medicine, and lungs is a part of the metal phase. So we're going to talk about lungs. We're going to talk a little bit about the organ that pairs with the lungs, which is large intestine, and see a lot of attributes the lung has in our lives, or what lung does to our bodies. Can you talk a little bit?
I deal a lot with the lung in grief with people.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned before, I really like the fact that you pointed out grief does not always have to be about a death.
Yes.
It could be about a divorce, a relationship breakup, forgot what they call the empty nester.
True.
A woman going through menopause,
Mm-hmm.
a young woman going into menses.
Yeah.
It could be anything. I lost my favorite purse and I can't find it anywhere. I lost my car. I lost my wallet. It could be any loss.
And one thing that's interesting too, because one thing that I always hear from my patients, and sometimes they say, "Oh, I miss the house that I have in this place.
Yes.
Now I'm in another place."
Yes.
So this kind of grieving too, right?
Yes.
You're grieving your past house or your past belongings.
Yes.
This is kind of grieving too. We all experience some kind of grieving at some point. Of course, if in my point of view, death, when you experience death of someone that we love, is the I would say it's kind of like the most hard grieving that we experience, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if you love someone. But the other ones we do, and we don't realize that. we don't realize we are in grieving, and like even if you move out from your house to another house, or you let's say you have a car accident and you lost your car that you like, and it's a kind of grieving too.
And also, this brings up even cancer survivors who have lost body parts
Yes.
too. We don't talk about that, but
No.
it really needs to be talked about. It really
Yeah,
does.
and doesn't need to be cancer survivor too, because today they do surgery to take off body parts, like
Yes.
a gallbladder, for example,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What else? What else I can say?
Appendix.
The appendix. Even if you do cosmetic,
Yes.
you do take it off body
Yes,
parts,
you do,
or
you
piece
do.
of them, right?
And then
Yeah.
our brain thinks it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal to your energy
It
body.
is, yeah, like like in a sense, like that consciously you think like, oh, it's not a big deal, it's to get better, but unconscious you have to work at that, because
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
part of your body that you are
Yes.
throwing away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have this book here that I thought was very interesting to bring here. It's called The Body Clock. It's from the author. It's from Germany. His name is Lothar Ursinus. He talks some attributes of the lungs. For example, there is a clock in our body. In Chinese medicine, the lungs, it's in between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning. So sometimes if you wake up those hours because you have something going on with your lungs, could be an allergy, could be grieving, could be any kind of asthma or respiratory disease, because the body wakes you up to tell you there's something wrong with that organ, and in this case, lungs, right? Another thing that I thought was interesting here, lungs is in Chinese medicine, is an organ that controls your skin and body hair.
Okay.
So a person that has skin problems, like too much heat, and the skin starts to get red, and you start to get like rashes. That can be a problem with the lungs too, because lungs control the skin. Anything you want to add?
I noticed that when somebody is grieving, maybe they're not processing the grieving of a loss in the way that their body needs to, they'll develop an upper respiratory infection.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct, that's correct. Because like when you grieve, what do you do? Like your respiration is kind of like very shallow, right? And you start to hunch, like you have this hunchback thing that it happens to you. It's all lungs related. So even depression, when
Yes.
person's depression,
Absolutely, yes.
like they don't tend to inhale and exhale the way we do normally. When they are in depression, they breathe like they have this shallow breathe, and they even don't look up. It's like they start to get this hunching back position. So we talk about the lung, especially because we want to go into grieving. Which, since you are the coach, you want to start first?
The grieving,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
I could talk hours about grief, first of all.
Yes.
None of us, or very few of us I'll say this, know how to support somebody who's grieving. We just don't know. We are so uncomfortable with their pain that we try to make it go away.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be fine. Be strong. He had a great life anyway. He was only
Yeah.
90. Or just all these things that we say to try to make their pain better, because that's all we know. And then we end up sticking our foot in our mouth, literally, because it's not what they need to hear at that time. So I encourage people to hold space for that person. Be there. Hold their hand. Say nothing. If you don't know what to say nothing. And just hold their hand and let them feel their pain is usually where we start with.
Yes, definitely.
There's a lot of do's and don'ts to grief too. So I run some groups called Honor Your Grief. We do it with individuals. We also do it with cello and sound. And I do some seated yoga movements too to help people to release that grief. Grief never goes away. It's always going to be within us. And what I've found is we grow around the grief. It doesn't get through us. We don't get through it. We just grow around it. It breaks our heart, and we mend that part, and our heart just becomes bigger for that reason too. So that's something not everybody can understand. There's no time limit on grief, ever. It'll stay with you for the rest of your life. It may not be as painful as it was the first day, 2 or week, but it's always going to be there. And it comes up on, it's like a tsunami that comes up on you unexpectedly. We never know when it's going to happen. And so many of us try to hide that, try to hold it back, and that's where the problems start with the body, when you hold that grief back. Emotionally, physically and emotionally. I deal more with the emotional end. And I say if grief is sat on the shelf long enough, it turns into anger.
Yes.
So when you see an older person who is just so angry about everything, I guarantee you there's a lot of unprocessed grief in their life.
I like what you say. Actually, I have an example. I have a patient before, a long time ago. It was very interesting. She has her husband, lovely husband. She loves him, like adore him all the time. So all of a sudden he had, unfortunately he passed, and he got a lung condition from work, and it was very hard for her to accept it. He passed. And one thing that I thought was interesting, she told me, my husband, I was with my husband all the time, and he passed exactly at 4 a.m. And that when you are in the grieving process and gets into your body, now she cannot sleep after past 4 a.m. She's wake up every day after her husband passed. 4 a.m. she cannot sleep anymore.
That happens a lot to people who are grieving their loss of their loved one. They'll wake up at the point that they passed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means she's still grieving, but she never work in herself to go through this grieving process. So she carries with her this grieving process.
And that's where our minds like to make us suffer.
Yes, yeah.
Because it has to keep repeating the story. I should have been there. I could have done more.
I could have done more.
There's all this, but it just makes our suffering even worse.
Even worse.
And it's the story.
Yeah.
So I try to help people to work beyond that, and let's find out, what did you love about their life? What was the best thing they ever taught you?
Yeah.
And to honor their life rather than create suffering with yourself. None of us are going to get out of here alive.
No. Yeah.
It's all going to happen to us.
Yeah. And one thing they don't understand too, I think most of us don't understand until we get more understanding about the grieving process, is energy never dies. The person's not dying at that point. It's only the body, only the vessel, because energy always going to be around us. So I know it's hard because I experienced grief in my life when my parents died, of course. But as you work on yourself and see that they still here some in some form because the energy never gonna die, you feel more like I'm not alone, and I still have
Correct.
my loved ones with me,
Absolutely. Yes.
right?
Yes.
But I know, I understand it's hard to accept that because like you say, the first thing in our mind comes is like what I do wrong, what I could do better for so they don't have to experience to pass this life, right? So yes, and we do treat people with grieving Chinese medicine, especially the lungs, right? That is one of the spirits in Chinese medicine we call Po. Po is the spirit that house inside the lungs, and that is responsible for the grieving process. And we do treat Po with points. Very interesting. We have points to treat this the Po, the spirit in Chinese medicine, and it's important for the practitioner always listen the patients, because sometimes, as we mentioned here, you have a disease that you don't understand why you have it, but it could be from your grieving.
Yes.
It could be.
It's interesting you talked about the death of a spouse, because there's always a complicated grief beyond that.
Yes.
Meaning that the spouse has died that I've been married to for 40 years. Now, I don't know who's going to drive me to the doctor. Who's going to mow the lawn now?
Yeah.
How am I going to make it financially? Every single one of those challenges in your life is another grief. So it's just complicated. It's makes it even worse for the person who is. So I encourage people, that anyone that's going through it, is to ask for help. I know there must be people out there who have said, how can I help you? When you're first grieving in that early grief, you have no idea what you need.
What you need, yes.
What you need, but
it's kind of like you lost.
Yes,
right?
you have no idea.
Yeah.
But what do most of us say? Just let me know. And the person grieving goes, I don't even know what I want. How can I tell you how to help me? But there's other ways that we can help. Do you want to get into how to help a grieving person?
Yes, let's get to the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I usually encourage people, if you have somebody that is grieving, something easy like this you could do is, I'll pick the kids up from school today, don't worry about it. Or buy grief groceries and leave them.
Yeah.
Something else you could do for someone who's grieving is tell me something about their life that I don't know. So especially if it's a child, that's a parent who's lost a child either by suicide or a disease. Of just tell me something about their life. What did they like? So take that interest in the person that has passed.
Yes.
So they can talk about that.
Yeah. True. And one thing that I notice, nature always look at you, like, believe it or not, because when I can tell myself, and I was experiencing a loss of my mother, was very suddenly, and was very hard for us, for me, my sisters, my brother. I have this squirrel outside my apartment bringing like these nuts every day in my porch. I was like, what? Never happened before, but happened that time when I was in grieving.
Sometimes even when you know someone's going to pass, if you get a chance, just say, if you were to come back to send me a message, how could I look for you?
Yes.
And the person passing may say, I'm going to come back as a butterfly.
Yeah.
Or every time you see a cardinal, I want you to think of me. Something. Go ahead and ask those questions. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And you talked about the energy body that doesn't die. I don't know the facts exactly, but I know when a body, human body and the spirit body separate,
Mhm.
and the physical body is now gone.
Yes.
The actual weight of that body changes when the
Mhm.
spirit leaves the body. I don't know
Yeah.
the exact number, but
Uh-huh.
it's a true fact.
Yes, and nice you mentioned when the body, you know, separate, because this separation, it's all related to the yin yang part of Chinese medicine, because the body is yin part that goes back to earth, and the yang part is the spirit that goes back to heaven. So it's it represents the separation of the yin and yang, but it's a kind of like a separation to generate another life and another the energy going to come back in another way. Uh, so it's nature again manifesting
Mm-hmm.
the way it should be. You know.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have an interesting story too. I think it was last fall. I was cleaning up my garden, taking all the dead leaves away, the dead plants, and just getting ready for winter. Summer's all done. And I have to tell you, for months afterwards, my thumb hurt right here. And I connect that to my body was grieving for the plants. Because we know that's connected to the lung meridian. Yes.
Yeah, because your thumb is right where the lung meridian starts close to the lungs and goes to the thumbs. So yeah, could be. It's a grieving.
Yes, I was grieving the loss
process
of my garden.
again. Okay, so I want to mention this. I thought was very nice. Dr. Laura Berman, and she has her own website and her own podcast. I'm gonna put a link for this. It's called The Do's and Don'ts of Supporting Someone in Grief. I wanna go through this so we can talk about it and do some comments, if you don't mind. So one thing here I'm gonna mention, you don't say to someone, I know how you feel. Right?
Yes, never, because you don't.
You don't.
You've never been in that relationship of whatever they lost.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I see, like, in situations, somebody say there, and the person who is in grieving, like, you don't know me.
You have no idea.
Yes. They really tell the person, like, you have no idea.
Yes.
Yeah. So instead, she recommends you to say something like, I can't imagine how difficult this is for you.
Yes.
Because even like if you experience a loss of an animal, like a dog, a cat, that a lot of people experience, and they have their animal as a part of their families, it can be devastating for the person.
I sometimes even say that I think the loss of a pet, when you have to euthanize, is even worse.
Even worse.
Because there's that.
Yeah.
It may not be able to be done naturally. So I do work with people doing that too.
Yes, even worse.
Yes.
Yeah. There's another one here. Don't say they are in a better place.
Yes. That is not what that person wants to hear.
they don't want to hear that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Instead of you say something like, I'm here for you if you want to talk about your loved one or share memories. Like you mentioned, right? Tell me about that person, how important the person was for you.
Yes. What did they like to do?
What they like to do.
Yes.
And it's really more like helpful for the person if you brings good memories from that person, because the person you never want to make the person forget their loved one. Their past.
Don't talk about
it. Don't do it. Don't try to like, oh no, let's do something else and forget what's happened. And no, you never wants to do that, because that's gonna hurt more and more the person. She said, don't avoid talk about their loved one. We just mentioned this. right? It's kind of like you killing the person again.
Yes.
Because if you avoid, it's kind of like you giving your back for that situation.
But I always try to teach people too, if you're going to services for someone who's passed, try to remember a story that person touched your life with to tell their grieved loved one.
Yes.
Just, I remember when so-and-so told me about this story, it just made me feel so comfortable. Something along those lines.
Yeah.
That really helps, because they may have not known that story,
Mm-hmm.
and that story probably could die in you, not even be mentioned again. So
Yeah.
it's always a good one.
Also, don't offer unsolicited advice.
Yes.
Right? Instead, you just listen actively
Mm-hmm.
and offer support without judgment when invited. Anything you want to say about it?
I don't even know if it's on the list, but when are you going to get over this?
Yes.
You should be over with this grief. Don't ever say that.
Don't
at
ever
all.
say that.
We never
Maybe
judge
the person
someone.
never gonna get over.
Never judge
Like
someone
that
else's
woman
grief.
I just mentioned the example, right?
Yes.
She always wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. She never got over.
Mm-hmm.
It was years and years
Yes.
after.
Yes.
Yeah. Another one. Don't say, at least they live a long life.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No.
No. Don't say that, because we cannot determine how long the person
Right.
can live or not.
Right.
Right. So I just you instead of that, you just acknowledge their loss and express sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
And don't try to fix their grief.
Right.
You just mention that, like, oh, this is gonna pass. Oh,
That's
let's
a
do
normal,
something else.
Yeah, let's do something fun.
No,
or
yeah. You have to accept their emotions. Okay. Don't tell them to be strong or urge them to move on.
Especially children.
Especially
Please do
children,
not tell the
yeah.
children they need to be strong for their mom
Yeah.
or their father, or just please don't.
No.
Don't.
No.
They're grieving too.
Instead of, she say, encourage self-care and take things in their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Normalize that every grief journey is different,
Yes.
right? Like we mentioned again, right? You don't know what that person is experiencing that moment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? It can be devastating or maybe not, but we don't know what level of emotions or grieving she's experiencing. Don't ask, how can I help? You
Right.
just say that
Yes.
in the beginning,
Yes.
right? So
That
yeah,
person doesn't even know what to. They have no idea.
they
what
don't
they're
have no
doing.
idea. You
No.
know, you can offer. She say, instead of, you can offer like a tangible support and company
Mhm.
without being asked. Okay.
Or even something even deeper than that. If you have a friend who's lost their spouse, gather your other friends up and say, okay, we need to pick the children up. Somebody needs to pick up groceries. How about you invite her to lunch? Just gather together as a team of support for that person.
Yes.
And they may say they don't want that. That's okay too. That's
Mhm.
to be respected.
Yes. Yes. So this was from her list, which I think is very helpful. When I add, sometimes if you don't know what to say, just a hug is
Yes.
it's a really can express a lot of things.
Be there.
Be there.
So they're
Hug the
they're
person.
yes,
you know.
we call it a container.
Yeah.
Be the container for them to
Yes.
feel safe to cry
Yeah.
or complain. And there's so many emotions of grief. There could be resentment. There could be anger.
Mhm.
There could be jealousy. There could
Yeah.
be overwhelm. It's not just about sadness.
No.
So if those feelings come up and you're grieving, do not judge them. Just let them move.
Yeah.
Let them move.
Yeah, but I believe, like, at some point, the person that passed, she gonna find a way to communicate with you at least one more
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Because when I can say my experience with that, like the week my mother passed, I have this dream that was so vivid. She came to hug me,
Mm-hmm.
and I could feel she hugging me.
Yes. Yes.
And one thing to confirm that, my sister has the same dream exactly.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Like, how come both of us
Yes.
gonna have the same dream?
Right. So that's connected for sure.
That's connected for sure, right? And
Absolutely.
And I know I remember the same week I saw the mantis.
Yes.
They say sometimes if you see a mantis can be someone that passed.
Oh.
And the same week I saw a mantis. It's like, wow.
Yes,
That's powerful.
yes.
Yeah. So at some point the person gonna
You
have
may
you,
hear it through a song, a poem,
to a song,
smell.
a dream.
Sometimes you can smell their perfume for nobody else is around you.
Yes.
Or maybe if they were a smoker, you could smell cigarette smoke all of a sudden.
Oh my God, I have experience with that too.
Yes.
Anything that you, in your experience as a grieving counselor, Gina? Anything
I would say anyone that is
you wanna
grieving
mention?
to be compassionate with yourself.
Uh-huh.
If you get invited to party after party and say, I'll be there, but if I change my mind, have a different plan. You don't have to go. Grieving over the holidays is always difficult, especially the first year. There's always the firsties, as I call them, to reach out for help. I mean, obviously you can contact me. I do have some tools and rituals that you can use for yourself, but just make a plan. Make 2 plans, make 3, so you have a choice at that minute.
Okay. And yes, so I'm gonna put Gina's contact at the end of the podcast too. So if you experience any grieving, you can contact Gina. We can contact us, and check our podcast about the heart, which it's very connected to this podcast too, because as I say in the beginning, heart, it's an emperor of the body. Right, it's the monarch, it's the high level, and the lungs, it's there to serve the heart. And when you experience anything that makes your heart sad, the lungs gonna start to put you in a grieving process.
Yes.
So yeah, they are very
good
connected.
advice. Thank you.
Very good connected, and fall is the lung season.
And
So your lung gonna be very in a high energetic level this season. So and one thing I want to mention too, like we talk about the pear organ, which is the large intestine, right? So one thing I see that we experience, and I see in my patients, in examples in my patients, when you're grieving, right, you are in a grieving process, and you, or like your friend or somebody around you, is trying to help you to pass through this grieving, to accept what you have to accept it, and to keep things that more for you without grieving, right? And there is a moment that you don't want to let go, and that's when the large intestine comes out, because when you don't let go, what's gonna happen to your large intestine? Large intestine is an organ that's supposed to take all your waste from the body and throw out, right? It creates the bowel movement. So when you don't accept things and don't let go, you're gonna start to be constipated. And I know it's hard for people to accept that too, but that is a real thing. And because the large intestine, you think large intestine is an organ that let things go. If you don't, you experience problems with your large intestine. It can be constipation, can be
diarrhea,
irritable bowel syndrome.
Yes.
It can be things like diverticulitis.
Yes.
Can be even colon cancer.
Yes.
If you go more serious, deep in there. Yep. So you have to think about that. Like, do your grieving process. Do whatever you can to accept what happened and let the thing go. You can even still, of course, you can still carry your memory of your loved ones if you experience death, or if you experience a loss of something that you like. You can even you can keep in your memory of that, but don't go deep like that. You are total surrounded by the emotion, and the emotion makes you feel down all the time, because they are gonna aggravate your large intestine too, which is the pair organ of the lungs.
Now, always remember your grief will be as unique as your fingerprint.
Yes.
So the grieving process or the grieving steps, it looks great on paper, right? Nice long line. Grieving is it's like a kitten that got into a ball of yarn. It's everywhere. It's this way, it's that way.
Yeah.
So let go of any expectations about your grief and just let it happen.
Yeah, I have I'll say two examples about the let go situation. One of patients came to me and say, "Oh, I have this constipation. I go to the bathroom, but I feel like it's still something there." And this came to my mind right away, and they say, "I don't know what you experience in life, but if you have something that you let you go, you have to let it go, because that's the body's telling you have something that let go, that you need to let go." And she started to cry.
Good.
It's like, it's like, you don't have to tell me.
Right.
You don't need to tell me.
Exactly.
That's your
Yeah.
choice to tell me or not. But your body's asking you. You have to let go. And another example that I could tell too is this lady. She was a patient of my friend, and she mentioned that to me too. She was doing acupuncture, and she was always having this kind of pain that she doesn't know, how to get better from it. And my friend was talking with her about things like, when a child, we can get trauma very easily if you don't take care of the child. And she say her patients start to cry because she say, "I have a trauma in my life. I was abused when I was a child." And right away the thing clicked to my friend and say, "I know how I'm gonna treat you with acupuncture," because she has some kind of trauma she could not let go.
Right. There's a lot of shame involved in that too.
Yes.
But that's a whole nother day.
That's a whole another day. We're gonna talk this in another podcast. But I just mentioned you have to always look for your grieving process, things that you don't want to let go, and work on it.
And if you get stuck, call me.
Yes, call us. Yeah, definitely.
Thank
Yeah. So thank you for watching us. So stay tuned, and to the next podcast, we hope to see you again. And put your questions on the, you can place your questions on our link below. And if you want to suggest like something that you want us to talk about it, we can do that too.
Great.
Right?
Sounds
Great.
good.
Thank you.